Good morning and welcome into the show today. Boy, I've got a ton of stuff for you today. We're going to try to get to a lot of things, a lot of good stuff here. But first, I want to just give a big shout out and thank you to all of our service members out there in harm's way, and just say thank you for all your sacrifices. You know, I want to tell you a story today about John and Jane Doe. They're in their mid-60s. The kids, they've grown and gone, and this couple's worked all their lives. They're not rich, but they have socked away some money for retirement. They've got a IRA, a 401k, some savings and investments. House is pretty much paid off. And John's had his eye on achieving a certain number for retirement, and they're almost there, real close. Now they're pretty confident that retirement is just around the corner. But by the end of my first meeting with John and Jane, they realize there's a lot more to retirement than they ever knew. And there's more work to be done before they can finally call it quits. I have several meetings every week with John and Jane Does of the world, and oftentimes these are sobering meetings. But you know what? It beats getting the news long after you're retired. By then, it's potentially too late to do anything about it. Do you think you're prepared to retire right now? Or is it possible there's some gaping holes in your plans that leave you vulnerable? Maybe you don't even know about them. There's more to retiring successfully than you may know, and it's time to find out right now. On today's show, I'm going to reveal the most overlooked pillars of retirement planning, plus the ultimate retirement planning checklist that could help prevent you from making a critical financial mistake. Before we get into that, though, I want to do a follow-on to last week's case study. Remember, I told you that I was going to show you this week how to supercharge that particular case study. So let me refresh your memory. I had Charlie case study. He was 65, had $1 million in his IRA, did not need the income. He was very fortunate and blessed. And what we ended up doing with that is moving it over to one of our programs we have. They give a 10% bonus on new deposits. So he started out with $1,100,000. And it has a guaranteed death benefit. And assuming he got absolutely no return whatsoever, by the time he passed away at life expectancy at 85, he would have had passed on $628,000 to his beneficiaries. And that's with taking out $550,000 of required minimum distribution. Now, assuming that he had the average rate of return that this program has averaged for the past 15 years, which is 7.79%, and by the way, not risking one dime of his money, at 85, his death benefit, his beneficiaries would get $1.6 million, and he would have taken out over $1 million in RMDs. That's a total of $2.6 million. All right, now, here's how you supercharge this case. Remember, he didn't need this income. But the IRS makes you take out a little bit after 70 and a half. You got to. If you don't, the penalty's stiff. The IRS is going to fine you 50% of what you're supposed to take out. Well, his RMD at 70 and a half on this IRA was $40,000 a year. So here's what he did with this money. After he paid the tax on it, he put what was left, about $30,000 or so, into a life insurance policy that would guarantee at his death to pass on $1.2 million completely tax-free. Completely tax-free. Now, that's how you supercharge this case. But more importantly, during his life, if he needed to use or get to some of that death benefit for, say, they have a clause in this policy that says if you have a chronic illness and a doctor says you can't do 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, then you can get up towards $240,000 tax-free to help pay for home health care or for, nursing home expenses and things like that. And if you're diagnosed with a terminal illness, then you can accelerate the death claim. You can pull out $1 million of that death claim if you need it, completely tax-free. Now, that's how you supercharge this case. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about these IRA programs and how we stretch them out, give us a call at 336-391-3409. All right, let's dig into a few situations that I see all too often that basically are overlooked areas that a couple planning for retirement tend to just not see coming at them. I think the biggest one is people don't have a defined income plan. You know, I've talked about this on this program so much. You need to go into retirement with a written, defined income plan. You need to know where your money is going to come from, what piece of your puzzle is going to pay for your absolute must-have necessities. This is your standard of living. This is the groceries, the electric bill, the phone bill, the taxes, you know, what keeps the roof over your head. How are you going to pay for that? Where's it coming from? Is that coming purely from Social Security, maybe a pension? Or do you need to set up some kind of a guaranteed income stream from your investments? That is so important to do, to have that written income plan. And that's what we do for our clients. And not only that, every year we revisit that plan and make sure nothing's changed. And if it has changed, and life, you know, your life does change, then we obviously have to go back in and make sure that we're covered there. Here's another one. Assuming that you'll live an average life expectancy, or even worse, I see this all the time. A lot of people don't think they're even going to make it to life expectancy. They say, "Oh, my dad, he passed away at 62. My mom didn't make it till 69. I'm probably not going to do it either." Well, you know what? You're not your mom and your dad. Yeah, you got their DNA, but the fact is, we are blessed to have better health care than they had. We tend to take better care of ourselves than they did. We get regular checkups. They didn't. So the fact of the matter is, you're probably going to be living longer than you think. You're going to probably be in retirement, 20, maybe even 30 years. It's not uncommon anymore. So, plan. I always try to, when I do these written income plans, these retirement plans for my clients, I stretch it out to age 100. And people say, well, that's crazy. I'll never live that long. Maybe not. But, there's a really, really good chance that one of the two of you can make it into your 90s nowadays. So wouldn't you rather see your plan perform to age 100 rather than 82? I mean, that's my goal. All right, let's move on. Here's another area that I see that is just way overdone or not looked at close enough. It's taking too much risk with the retirement assets that you have now. I'm telling you what, I see this all the time. It is so common to sit down with a couple who's 60, 63, 64 years old, and they've got 90% of their money at risk in some kind of a market-based instrument or precious metals or something like that. Having some of that is fine, but not 80 and 90% of your total portfolio. You're coming away from the Wall Street brokers of the world, and their whole focus is to growing wealth over time. You need to sit back and think about that a minute. You're not 30 years old anymore. You're not. You're now getting into the wealth distribution stage of life, and that's when you got to be a lot more cautious. Let me tell you something. If you got 80 or 90% of your portfolio invested in the market, and we have another 1929 type stock market collapse, do you know how long it took the market to get back to the 1929 level? It wasn't until 1954, 25 years. Do you have 25 years for your money to get back to where it was? No, you should. It's a very simple rule of thumb you can use. It's the rule of 100. It basically says take your age, subtract it from 100. If you're 65, 35 is what's left. No more than 35% of your portfolio ought to be in a risky asset. And that just simply takes your foot off the accelerator as you grow older, very slowly. So great rule of thumb. You know, retiring successfully today just doesn't happen by accident. It's more than just saving and investing for retirement. It's got to happen with a plan. You got to have that plan I keep talking about. You know, it happens with a plan for how and when you'll claim your Social Security benefits. It happens with a plan when you'll withdraw money from your IRAs, your 401ks, and your other accounts. It happens with a plan to pay fewer taxes. Have a tax-efficient withdrawal strategy. And it happens with a plan to turn your savings and investments into income, an income powerhouse, while reducing your risk at the same time. Do you have that plan? It's time to take the first step and get our customized 5-point retirement master plan. Let me prove to you how we can make the most out of every dollar you've saved for retirement. Your initial analysis is not going to cost you a dime, and there's no obligation. Many of the strategies we talk about on this show work best for people who've saved for retirement and have at least $100,000 set aside for retirement. You know, I'd love to be able to do this for everybody, but I can't. So the first 10 callers on today's show at 336-391-3409, I will do your 5-point master retirement plan. That's 336-391-3409. Now, when we come back on the next segment, I've got another case study for you, and I will go into some more mistakes that I see people make just before retirement. You're listening to the Wealth Guardians radio program right here on 94.5 WPTI, the Piedmont's news, talk, and sports station. Well, welcome back. I'm Doug Ray, and you're listening to the Wealth Guardians radio program. You know, you've worked your entire life, and you may not be rich, but you've socked some money away for retirement. You got the 401k, you got the IRA, maybe even some savings and some other investments. And you're pretty confident that retirement is just here, right there around the corner. But is it possible that there's some gaping holes in your plan, and there's more work to be done? Or you even have a plan at all? Coming up in this segment, we're going to continue our investigation into some of those gaping holes that I see all the time. People don't even know that they have these holes, but they have to be shored up before you have a successful retirement. But first, I want to do another case study for you. You know, I've talked about indexed annuities a lot on this program because I think it's a really good investment vehicle for some of your retirement funds if you're a senior. They give you the ability to grow your IRA assets. So they keep it very, very safe. You can't lose money in them. But a lot of times what happens is after folks have come in and sat down and we've gone over the pros and the cons, I'll tell you the negatives about them too, they go away. Maybe they go back to their old advisor or they get on the Internet, and there's all kinds of stuff on the Internet, some correct, some completely misleading and incorrect. And people don't know what's what. They just don't. But their advisor might say, hey, you don't want that. Those things don't work. I hear that a lot. Those things don't work. Well, you know something? There's good ones and there's bad ones, just like everything has good and bad in it. You know, there's good mutual funds and there's bad mutual funds. There's good pizza pies and there's bad pizza pies. There's good and bad in life, period. We know that. So I have a longtime client. I've got plenty of these. I'm just going to tell you about this one because we were doing our annual review last Friday. She's down in Union, South Carolina, lives with her daughter and son-in-law. Her husband, John, passed away about 4 years ago, so she's living with them. Anyway, I guess it was in maybe the summertime of 2009. We put $160,000 of her IRA into an indexed annuity by Athene. Now, Athene is a company that I have worked with for years. In fact, if you listen to the first case study I did in the first segment, that was an Athene indexed annuity. that produce those results. So this lady puts $160,000 back in the summer of 2009 in this Athene indexed annuity. And over the course of the years, I calculated it out, she's taken out $180,000. Listen to me. She put $160 in, and over the course of the years, what's that? It's 16, so it's about 7 years. She's taken out $180,000 in withdrawal, to live on. Would you guess how much she has left in that indexed annuity? I know you can't. You can't guess. I'll tell you. She still has $176,000 left in that indexed annuity. So you tell me they don't work? You put 160 in, 7 years, you take out 180, and you still have 176,000 left. I think that's pretty good for an investment vehicle that's absolutely safe and guaranteed. Not bad at all. Okay, so let's dig back into these areas that most people completely overlook. Here's a big one. Not having a long-term care plan. Most people don't when they come and see me. And you know what? The statistics are, out of a couple, at least there's a 70% chance that one of them will have a long-term care episode or a home health care event. That's pretty high odds for not having taken a look at this risk. It is a financial risk that could devastate not just you financially, but it could devastate your family and everybody you love. So I encourage you, if you haven't looked into long-term care, look into it now. There's new and improved long-term care plans out there. I know the old-fashioned stuff you might have looked at before and didn't like it because you always felt like, gosh, if I go through life and I never use this stuff, I've wasted all those premium dollars. And they're expensive, there's no doubt about it, and they get more expensive every day. But, we've got different kinds of long-term care now. We've got long-term care that's built around an asset-based vehicle that guarantees your long-term care premiums will not go up. It can cover both couples. I can build a plan that will cover both couples for the rest of their life, even if both of you end up in a facility. So don't let this part of your retirement go completely unnoticed. It's critical. Genworth last year paid out the highest single claim ever for one person. It was a little lady who went into an Alzheimer's unit, and she was there for 15 years. And she had a Cadillac plan she bought, thank goodness. It paid for the rest of her life. Genworth paid $1.2 million in long-term care claims for her. You see why this is such a risk? Don't let it happen to you. All righty, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show right here on 94.5 WPTI. We're talking today about gaps or areas that may be overlooked in your retirement plan. We've talked about not having long-term care. We've talked about not having a written retirement income plan. We've talked about assuming that you won't live to life expectancy or longer. Let's look at another area, overestimating investment returns. Here's where we kind of get back to risk again. You'll hear all the time that stocks have averaged 9 or 10% per year, and that's true, they have. But that's over a 75-plus year time frame. What happens in between can be critical to your retirement. I like to use the example of, your mutual fund says you get an average annual rate of return of, say, let's just use 12%. Great fund, right? And you would probably want to have some of that. But that's the average annual rate of return. Let's say we have a market, one year goes down 50% and then up 50% the next year. What is the average rate of return? Well, it's easy calculation, right? It's zero. Let's say you put $100,000 of your monies, your retirement monies, into that particular fund. It goes down 50% the first year. Where are you at? You have $50,000. But the next year, lo and behold, it goes up 50%. The market goes up 50%. And what do you have now? Are you back to your 100,000? It's a 0% average rate of return, right? No, your $50,000 got a 50% rate of return, so you're at 75,000. You're still 25% underwater. How can that be? It's average zero. Well, your money doesn't get the average rate of return. Here's something you need to learn right now. It gets something called the geometric mean. That's why investors have always underperformed the market averages. So be very aware of that. Okay, so maybe you have saved diligently all your working career and invested for retirement. And if so, that's wonderful. That's great, and I commend you for it. But the truth is, that's only half the battle. It's what you do with your money that really matters. How will you put your money to work for you while reducing the risk? How will you avoid the retirement tax trap that could cost you thousands in needless taxes? There's penalties and there's fees too. How could you prevent a sudden illness, like long-term care, from turning your retirement into a financial catastrophe? Discover how you can make the most out of every dollar you save for your retirement with our 5-point retirement master plan. It's so simple. It's not going to cost you anything. I'm not going to obligate you to anything. You know, many of our strategies that I show people work best for folks who've put away at least $100,000 for their retirement needs. So if you've done that and you haven't gotten a written retirement roadmap, then call us at 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409. And let's start today putting in place a written retirement income plan that you can count on for the next 20, maybe even 30 years of your retired life. You know, you want to make those years count. And we know for a fact that retirement years are divided up into thirds. The first third is the go-go years. The next third is the slow-go years. And then finally we have the no-go years. Let's make those go-go and slow-go years really, really, really count for you. Call us at 336-391-3409. All right, let's dig into one of these other areas that people don't even see coming at them and confuse with other things. And that basically means a lot of folks confuse investment returns with income. You know, here's what I mean by that. Let's say, for example, your investments have averaged 7% per year, and you need to withdraw 5% per year. That's your income. Well, you'd say, okay, well, that's pretty good. If I'm earning 7 and I'm taking 5 out, no problem, right? Well, here's the problem with that. It would be wonderful if you constantly got a 7% rate of return every single year, but that doesn't happen in real life, does it? No. Some years it's 7, some years it's 10, some years it's 2, sometimes it's a negative. If you're in a market-based product, you're going to have negative years. Those low earning years and those negative, especially the negative earning years, really, really hurt. You know, I've told a story many times about twin brothers who retired back in the early 70s. Both of them had exactly $600,000 set aside for retirement. The only difference between the brothers is one had a pension, the other didn't. The one who had to rely on his retirement nest egg to take money out of it took out 5% a year. They'd averaged 8% during that period of time, but one brother, the one that had to take money out of his retirement account, went through the bad market in the 70s and completely ran out of money by the time he was 79 years of age. The other brother, who didn't have to take money out, had the pension plan and Social Security. He ended up life with a huge nest egg that he could pass on. So don't let that be you. Do not confuse investment returns with income. Come and sit down and have a talk with me, and let's hash this out for you and make sure you haven't overlooked anything before you head into retirement. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to have that conversation. So give us a call at 336-391-3409. Well, I've enjoyed being with you today. You've been listening to the Wealth Guardians program right here on 94.5 WPTI, the Piedmont's news, talk, and sports station.